I won't give personal information to a fake mother. An unbelievable line came out of my son's wife's mouth, and I was speechless, my mind made up. Even when I asked, "Won't you regret this?" she replied with a mocking tone, "No way." Well, there's nothing I can do. I'm not a weak woman who cowers at words. You've crossed the line, and you shouldn't have. My name is Mariah, and I'm about to turn 60. I lost my husband and raised 2 children with all my might. Fortunately, I've loved Japanese culture since I was young, and that led me to pursue the path of calligraphy. I became a licensed instructor in Japan and was able to support my family with my beloved calligraphy work. Life is unpredictable, so the three of us lived in a small apartment without luxury, practiced frugal living, and saved money every month. My eldest son, Simon, was an easy child when he was young, but as he grew older, I felt his emotional weakness. My daughter Liddy, unlike her brother, grew into a spirited and lively girl. My hard-working daughter earned her tuition through part-time work without relying on me, graduated from college, got a job at her first-choice company, and is working enthusiastically. Simon was indecisive, and at 35, he still hadn't found a partner. I was worried, but being single for life is not uncommon these days, so I was careful not to pressure him about marriage. There are countless people who marry and become unhappy, so marriage does not necessarily equal happiness. Then Simon brought his girlfriend home. My daughter and I were curious about what kind of girl she was, but we were taken aback because she was so different from what we had imagined. Of course, we shouldn't judge people by their appearance, but she seemed to weigh more than the 132-pound slender Simon. But before Simon could introduce her, Gloriana said, "He kept saying he wanted me to meet his mom, so here I am today. Nice to meet you." Normally, one would be nervous in front of a partner's parents, but Gloriana was calm. Also, it's common sense to call him Simon in front of his parents, even if you usually call him this guy. Am I just old-fashioned? When I served tea and cake, Gloriana ate the strawberry shortcake in 2 seconds, chugged the tea, and said, "More please." After some chit-chat, my daughter asked, "Gloriana, what do you do for a living?" "Call me sister." That's a bit... My daughter probably didn't want to call her sister, and I felt the same way. Is Simon planning to marry this woman? Work? I'm not working now. I had an annoying senior who nagged me, so I choked him from behind, and I got fired. A red card is too harsh, don't you think? I was astonished, but I needed to teach her common sense as a working adult. Times have changed, and there are laws that prevent easy dismissal, but violence in the workplace can be grounds for immediate termination. Then Gloriana glared at Simon with a smile and slapped his shoulder. "Hey, your mom took the side of my senior. You're just going to stay silent in her pinch?" My son looked troubled and said nothing. I was worried about the future. After that, Gloriana often came to our house to hang out. She would casually open our fridge and eat ice cream, drink cola, and munch on the table snacks. My daughter and I were dumbfounded, but we hesitated to complain, fearing it would come back to us 100-fold. Eventually, my son moved out and started living on his own. Was it Gloriana who told him to live alone? Certainly for her, living alone would make it easier to meet than living with his family. One day, as I placed a sheet of paper on the table and picked up my brush, my daughter asked, "What's this month's quote?" I used to write an inspiring quote every month and hang it on the wall. I wrote all at once. "Be gentle as a spring breeze with people, and like a lion king against evil." Gloriana peeked in and exclaimed, "No way, that's incredibly good! You could be a pro, Mom!" My daughter quickly glared at Gloriana with a scowl. She is a pro. "Are you like a Japanese teacher or something?" "She's a calligrapher. You know, calligraphy. She's an instructor." "I know that much. It's calligraphy, right?" I was pleased with my daughter's desire to show off that her mother was an important person, but Gloriana didn't seem to listen much. I was forced to do it a bit in elementary school for cultural exchange, but I hated it. The teachers were so picky about the strokes. I wanted to throw ink on their heads. "Gloriana's handwriting is bad, so you should learn from Mom." I think my son meant it casually, but at that moment, Gloriana glared at him with devilish, scary eyes and scolded him in a low voice. "If you say something stupid again, a dropkick won't be enough." "Don't get so mad." Gloriana laughed loudly, looking at the ceiling while watching TV. To put it nicely, she was powerful and hardy. To put it badly, she lacked grace. No, she was unreasonable, rude, rough, and crude, and I couldn't see her as the suitable wife for my son. I wanted to throw ink on her head. Gloriana was also overly familiar with my daughter Liddy. Liddy, you're so thin. Are you eating properly? Gloriana, have you ever thought about dieting? I was taken aback, but Gloriana continued the conversation with a smile. How old is Liddy? I'm 28. I'm 30. If you talk back to me like that, even though you're younger, I'll put you in a bulldogging headlock. Bulldog? Yeah, people often say I look like a bulldog. Are you picking a fight? She might have meant it as humor, but neither my daughter nor I found it funny. One day, I called Simon home alone, and the three of us had a serious talk. Brother, I'll be clear. I'm against your marriage to Gloriana. If that's what this is about, I'm leaving. This is important. I thought I could trust anyone Simon or Liddy brought home, but Gloriana is beyond unreasonable. That's not true. She has her good points. Brother, you can't say anything to Gloriana, can you? It's pathetic. I had intended to choose my words carefully, but Liddy was straightforward. If your girlfriend is rude to Mom, you should warn her, normally. You have to tell her to shut up if she complains. You don't know Gloriana, so you can say that. If I tell her to shut up, I'll be in the hospital in 2 seconds. I believe that a couple where the woman is stronger than the man is ideal, but Gloriana's strength is excessive. Marriage is not just a matter between two people. Both families become relatives. I had planned to treat Simon's wife like my own child, but honestly, I have 0% confidence in getting along with Gloriana. A heavy silence lingered until Simon suddenly stood up. What's this? Everyone's bad-mouthing Gloriana! Everyone? Does that mean your friends are against her too? Yeah, they're all terrible, saying things like, that's not right, and just practice with her. I couldn't help but think that his friends were right. A marriage blessed by many, including family and friends, is desirable. I wanted my son to reconsider, but he kept defending Gloriana. You don't even try to see her good side, just badmouth her. I'm fed up. We're not badmouthing her. Her parents are kind. They even welcome me warmly whenever I visit, treat me to expensive steaks, and even took me to a 3-star Michelin restaurant. Is that what you mean by kindness, brother? I was as astonished as Liddy, but my son ranted on. Compared to her house, being at home is painful. If all we can do is have depressing conversations like this, I won't come anymore. It seemed that Simon couldn't keep a secret from Gloriana, and he had told her that my daughter and I were against the marriage. Gloriana came storming into the house with my son. I never dreamed that both mother and daughter would be bad-mouthing me. We're not bad-mouthing you. You're not the ones getting married, so stop interfering. Her tone became rough, and I thought this must be her true nature. Gloriana started to pick on Simon, too. It's your fault for not speaking up properly! When Gloriana needed my child's body, I finally yelled, Stop it! People change when they meet someone of the opposite sex. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. Did I make a mistake in raising my son? I don't remember spoiling him. The teenage and 20s are times to train the mind and body, so I didn't indulge him. If you grow up without knowing hardship when you're young and remain weak-hearted, you'll complain, even in a privileged environment. A strong-hearted person can thrive even when adversity is a daily occurrence. I wanted to raise a strong child, but Simon is weak. Gloriana complained to Liddy and me one-sidedly and left Simon behind. When Liddy started blaming Simon, he lost his temper. A guy who takes his mother's side when his mother and girlfriend fight is the worst, isn't he? That's not good. That's not true. You don't care about how I feel. Caught in the middle. Enough already. Simon left too, and we didn't see him for a while. Then one day, something I never imagined happened. A postcard in the mailbox. It was printed with, "We got married," and there was a photo of Simon and Gloriana, smiling and arm in arm. Had they finally married? I thought they must have had a ceremony just for the two of them and decided to at least send a congratulatory card as a parent. The postcard strangely didn't include the address of their new home. I called my son. When I talked to Simon, I learned that they hadn't held the ceremony just by themselves. He said they had a grand wedding with Gloriana's parents, relatives, friends, Simon's friends, and colleagues. I felt weak all over, and my knees began to tremble. Do you realize what you've done? If you're going to lecture me, I'll hang up. Without letting me know, they held the ceremony without inviting any relatives from the groom's side. Images of my relatives flashed before me, and I felt sad. I can't explain why I didn't invite them to Simon's wedding, and I can't face them anymore. Didn't Gloriana's parents object, thinking it was too much? An unreasonable child from unreasonable parents. Something inside me began to crumble. Then Gloriana came on the phone. Put your hands on your chest and think hard about why you weren't invited to the wedding. But I'll take the card. I want to bring wedding and moving gifts to your new home, so please tell me the address. I won't give personal information to a fake mother. An unbelievable line came from my son's wife's mouth, and I was speechless, my mind made up. Even when I asked, "Are you sure you won't regret this?" she replied with a mocking voice, "No way." Well then, it can't be helped. I'm not a weak woman who will cower at being spoken to like this. Put my son on. If you're going to lecture, forget it. Put my son on now! When I yelled loudly, Gloriana yelled back. Don't act tough on the phone. If you yell again, I'll headbutt you. Hello? I have something important to talk about, so come home. If it's depressing, I don't want to hear it. I have to give you the congratulatory card. A card? Hearing about the congratulatory card, my son said, I'll come. And I felt even more pitiful. Since Simon might get angry and leave if he had to face Liddy's rapid-fire words, I talked to him alone. I wanted Simon and Liddy to become strong-minded people, so I didn't indulge them or allow selfishness during their teenage and 20s. Enough with old stories. Where's the gift? Since your father worked hard, I was able to save most of the money I earned from calligraphy. Simon's eyes sparkled as the conversation turned to money. I lived frugally and saved money, planning to surprise you with a large sum when you got married. Simon's smile grew, and he leaned forward. I saved $100,000 for you. My son's eyes widened in surprise, and he shouted with joy. $100,000? But you did something unthinkable by holding a wedding without telling your real mother. What? In my common sense, that's something that should never happen. So, you're no longer my son. You're a stranger. It would be rude to give a stranger such a large gift, so I decline. My son stood frozen with his mouth open for a few seconds, then burst into tears and ranted. What are you talking about, stranger? Give me the $100,000! My only child is my daughter Liddy. Please leave. Wait, Gloriana said she didn't want to invite you. That's why you should only care about your new family. My firm attitude and cold voice left Simon flustered. The conversation is over. Please leave. Stop talking like that. Are you saying you're cutting ties between parent and child? Holding a wedding without telling me means you've already cut those ties, doesn't it? No. No, no! No matter what my husband said, I wouldn't forgive him. It's always been like this. Liddy, Liddy, Liddy. You always favor her. I only have one child, so what do you mean by favoritism? Simon ran out of the house, crying and screaming. As planned, I moved from the apartment to a newly built house and lived comfortably with Liddy. Without meeting Gloriana, there was no stress. However, one day when I returned from shopping, Simon was in front of the house. I was surprised, moving to such a fine house. It looks sturdy and earthquake-resistant. Did you follow me? Please stop with the formal language. Give me the $100,000. It's not fair to favor only your sister. I have nothing to say to a stranger like you. Please leave. Then Liddy came home. Brother, you brought this on yourself. Reflect on it a little. Not that I'll forgive you, even if you do. You plan to take $200,000, including my share? You're 35 and still expecting money from your parents? Don't you get it? Liddy's words were harsh. I intervened, fearing Simon might get angry. You chose this path. You chose your wife over your mother and sister. Holding a wedding in silence means just that. As Simon hung his head, unable to argue, a taxi pulled up and Gloriana got out, shouting, "I wasn't invited, but I came. I thought you were being manipulated by your toxic mother and sister." Gloriana ranted at Liddy and me like a machine gun. "Moving without telling your family? That's unbelievable." Family? I looked back, then at Gloriana and Simon again. Who's talking about whose family? "Oh, you're going that way, turning around dramatically to say you're talking to the wall, not me. You've watched too many movies, but I don't mind that kind of timing." "You said it. You called me a fake mother, so I have no intention of giving wedding or moving gifts to a fake son and a fake daughter." "Nitpicking, huh? If you nitpick, I'll counter with a neck chop before a dragon screw. You won't catch me with wordplay." I couldn't hold back and yelled, "Speak seriously when talking about important matters." "I warned you about yelling, or are you less intelligent than a crow?" "I'll call the police." Hearing the word police, Gloriana seemed a bit frightened, but didn't give up. "Anyway, we'll take the $100,000. With that, Simon and Gloriana left. I was disappointed by their desire for the $100,000, not because they wanted to keep family ties. It's a common plot in dramas, where the mother eventually gives in to emotion and hands over the money to her son. But that would never be for my son's benefit. If one goes astray, family should help, but if the spoiled thinking isn't cured, the same mistakes will surely be repeated. I had a strong resolve not to give even a single dollar. I want to treat good citizens with the gentleness and freshness of a spring breeze. But against evil, a spring breeze won't protect those dear to me. Against evil, against enemies, I must face them like a lion. My policy is to respond sincerely to sincere people, but to respond with strength to arrogant ones. The boomerang effect is scary. Given her attitude, Gloriana may have hurt many people in her life. Gloriana's parents seem to be on the brink of divorce. My son informed me, but it's none of our business. Gloriana's father, who seems to be 60, my age, had an affair with a woman 20 years younger. He had an inappropriate relationship with a female employee for years, and it seems his wife found out. Gloriana and her father argued during a marital fight, and her father ended up in the hospital. I was surprised that Simon's previous words were not a metaphor. She really did hit him. One night, Simon came crying. "What do you need?" "I apologize for everything so far. Please help me." "Help with what?" Despite it being night, Simon raised his voice. "Family helps each other when in trouble, right?" "Your voice is loud. It's a nuisance to the neighbors." Sure enough, a neighbor was looking out the window, so I reluctantly let Simon in. "Gloriana and my father were arguing, and when my father slapped Gloriana, she unbelievably countered with a German suplex." "German?" "You wouldn't think Gloriana could do such a vivid bridge with that body, normally." Liddy slammed the table with a bang, angry. "Speak seriously when you're asking for something serious." "I'm not joking, I'm just flustered." I don't know much about wrestling, so I don't know what a German suplex is, but I understood that Simon was confused. "My father hit the back of his head and is now hospitalized. He's lying about falling down the stairs, but the doctor is suspicious. You have to tell the doctor this is an assault case." "Please stop!" After holding his head in his hands, my son spoke softly. "If my father can't work, our finances will be tight. Neither my mother nor Gloriana work, and my meager salary can't support us." "Then you must get Gloriana to work, quickly, though I worry if any company would hire her." Even with the sarcasm towards Gloriana, Simon didn't get angry, but bowed his head. "Mom, I don't need $100,000. Just give me $10,000, please." "It's impossible." When I answered without hesitation, Simon said, "Understood. I'll bring Gloriana, and she'll apologize." "That won't happen." "I'll make her apologize." If my son could make Gloriana apologize, I thought I might reconsider, my parental feelings getting the better of me. The next day, Simon really brought Gloriana. Gloriana, probably acting, looked solemn, bowed her head. "Please forgive my rudeness until now." "Lies! Did you think you were being rude?" For a moment, Gloriana glared at Liddy, but quickly hung her head. "Please, help our family. I beg you." "I refuse." I answered immediately, and Simon's face turned pale. Mom! As Gloriana tried to kneel, I spoke first. It's useless to grovel on the floor. Ignoring Gloriana's trembling humiliation, I said, when dealing with someone who's lived for 60 years, it's important not to underestimate them without knowing what hardships they've been through. Gloriana looked up at me. Did I look like just a gentle calligraphy teacher to you? Even if you claim to be a mafia woman, I won't be intimidated. Gloriana! I smiled wryly. A mafia woman? What a lack of imagination. It's not about that. I'm a patient person, but once I decide not to forgive, I can be utterly cold-hearted. Understand? Isn't family supposed to help each other in times of trouble? Liddy shook her head in disbelief. Gloriana, you crossed the line you shouldn't have. Please leave. Realizing she wouldn't be forgiven, Gloriana lashed out at Simon. It's your fault for having zero persuasiveness and credibility. It's your fault for not being patient. You promised to endure whatever was said. Take it outside. You're unbearable. Cold-hearted sister. You should have given her a pile driver on the concrete, not on the carpet. Feeling threatened, Simon ran out of the house, and Gloriana chased after him. I didn't stop them. I heard my son's screams from outside, but I ignored them. Simon apparently divorced Gloriana, and Gloriana's parents also divorced. Truly a family torn apart. My heart ached. If I laughed at others' tragedies, I wouldn't escape the boomerang effect either. My son came to the house again, but I spoke to him at the entrance and didn't let him in. This is hard to say, but can I live here with you? It's impossible. Simon hung his head at my immediate response. Indulging him now would be meaningless. After that, I heard nothing from Simon. Days like a storm continued, but now both Liddy and I enjoy clear skies every day. One day, Liddy said she would bring her current boyfriend over, and I felt a pang of anxiety. If her boyfriend turned out to be another rude and unreasonable man, I would feel it was fate. However, the young man my daughter brought was sensible and decent. I breathed a sigh of relief.